Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we'll be discussing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 13th January 2019. Today's discussion will be in two parts. One part will be discussed by me and the other part will be discussed by my colleague Ms. Shubhangi Sharma. The articles to be discussed today are reflected on your screen and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's start. This news has been taken from page number 7 from the second section of the Hindu newspaper. The article talks about the growth in the volume of the business carried out at the major seaports in our country. From your UPSC perspective, these figures of volume growth is not important, but what would be important are the major ports located in India. Therefore, as a part of a discussion of this article, we'll be first talking about the major seaports in India, their location and features, and then in the last, we'll be briefly looking at the Sagarmala project as well. From the perspective of your syllabus, under the prelims, it will form a part of your geography, and from your mains, it will form a part of GS paper 3 under Indian economy and issues related to planning and mobilization of resources. At the onset of our discussion, let us be very clear that as regards to the number of major seaports in India, when you will Google this information, there is a kind of confusion. A lot of websites will show you that there are 13 major ports in India, but according to the Ministry of Shipping's website, there are only 12 major ports in India currently. Further, even as per the information given by the Minister of the Shipping in August 2018 during one of the Parliament session also mentions that there are 12 major ports in India and 200 minor seaports in India. So thus, relying on that information which has been provided by the government, for our discussion, there are 12 major seaports in India and 200 minor seaports in India. Before we discuss about the major ports in India, let us know a few things about India's coastline. India has the 18th longest coastline amongst all the countries in the world, and the Indian coastline stretches over 75,000 kilometers, and thus it makes India one of the major peninsulas of the world. A peninsula is any piece of land which is surrounded by water on the majority of its border. Now, the coastline of India runs over 9 states and 4 union territories. The western coastline spans over 5 states, namely Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala and Goa. And the eastern coastline is spread over the states of Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha and West Bengal. The 4 union territories which lie along the coastline of India are Daman and Diu, Puducherry, Lakshadweep Islands as well as the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now we'll be talking about the 12 major seaports in India. Before discussing about them, you should know as far as the control and operation of these seaports in India is concerned, the power lies both with the central government as well as the state government. List 1 of the 7th schedule has major ports as one of its items. Therefore, all the major ports in the country will be handled by the central government as it is placed under the union list. On the other hand, the third list or the concurrent list says that all the ports other than those declared by or under the law made by the parliament and all those ports which are not major ports, that is your non-major ports or minor ports as well as your intermediary ports, will come under list 3 and is usually operated by the state government concerned. Let us now look at the 12 major ports and a few unique points about them. The first is the Kandla port, which is also called as the Deen Dayal Upadhyay port and is located in the state of Gujarat. It is a tidal port and it is the largest port in India in terms of the volume of the trade it handles. On the map, it is located right here in the state of Gujarat. The second, the Marmagaon port. The Marmagaon port is located in the state of Goa and is located on the estuary of river Juari. Third, the Mumbai port, which is right here on the map, is the largest natural port of our country as well as the busiest port. Fourth is Haldia. Haldia is located in the state of West Bengal. Haldia and the Kolkata port are usually taken together, so do not get confused if you read Kolkata instead of Haldia somewhere. Now, Haldia port is a riverine port situated on the river Hooghly and is also known as the Diamond Harbour. The fifth, Jawaharlal Nehru port, also known as the Nhava Sheva port, is located right here in the state of Maharashtra and it is India's largest artificial port. Sixth, Mangalore is located in the state of Karnataka right here and is very famous for iron ore exports. Seventh is the port of Cochin, which is located in Kerala and is situated on the Vembanand lake. This port is famous for its exports in spices and salts, especially coffee. Eighth is the port of Tuticorin, located in the state of Tamil Nadu and is situated on the Gulf of Mannar and trades especially in fertilizers as well as petrochemicals. Eighth is the Chennai port. It is an artificial port and is the second busiest port in our country. Next is the Ennore port, which is again located in the state of Tamil Nadu, and the Ennore port is India's first corporatized port. That is, it is owned by a corporate of companies. Next is the Visakhapatnam port, which is located in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and it is the deepest port in India and again trades in iron ore, especially exporting iron ore to Japan. 12th is the port of Paradeep, which is located in the state of Odisha, and it is known for its export in iron and aluminium, which are found abundantly in the state of Odisha. In addition to these 12 major ports, we have 200 minor ports in India too. The ambitious Sagarmala project comes under the Ministry of Shipping, and it is basically a port-led development program whose main aim is to link the major as well as the minor ports of India with the hinterland of our country so as to develop a robust water navigation system which will help to take all-round development even to the remote and hinterland areas of our country. Therefore, the Sagarmala project envisages the growth of coastal as well as inland shipping in India. To achieve its ambitions and goals, under the Sagarmala project, the government will focus on enhancing the port infrastructures as well as modernizing the current ports so that there can be a port-led development. The government also aims to increase the operational capacity of the existing ports in our country so that the ports in India can handle higher volume of trade, and for this, the government also wants to optimize the current logistics that it has. So basically, the government wants to improve the infrastructure, modernize the ports in India so that the operational capacity and the logistics can be better utilized. And if the ports in our country start to function in a much more efficient way, then this port-led development will have a spillover effect in all the areas surrounding that major port. And therefore, there can be development in even the hinterlands of a country where currently a proper system of navigation is not available. As part of the project, the government will set up a National Sagarmala Apex Committee which will be headed by the Minister of Shipping, and this Apex Committee will basically provide an overall policy guidance for the implementation of the Sagarmala project. Further, in 2016, the Indian government incorporated the Sagarmala Development Company under the Companies Act, and this Sagarmala Development Company will function as a special purpose vehicle for the project development of the Sagarmala. Further, at the national levels, Sagarmala coordination and steering committees will be formed, which will include the cabinet secretaries of various ministries like the shipping, the road transport, the highways, the tourism, defense, etc. And this coordination and steering committee will provide a better inter-ministry coordination. Hence, this committee will provide coordination between all the ministries, state governments as well as the agencies which are connected with the implementation and the review of the Sagarmala project. Lastly, the Union government has decided to prepare a national perspective plan for the entire coastline of India, under which it wishes to integrate the industrial corridors, the dedicated freight corridors, the national highways, the special economic zones, etc. Further, under this national perspective plan only, the government will also identify certain coastal economic zones which will be set up by particular state governments. So under this national perspective plan, the government wants to integrate all these special corridors and all these special economic zones so as to provide a much more holistic and coordinated development. Now, as far as the importance of the Sagarmala project is concerned, the Sagarmala project is India's counter to China's string of pearls policy, and in addition to providing port-led development, the Sagarmala project will also help to enhance the defense capability of the Indian Navy. Thus, even from the perspective of security infrastructure, the Sagarmala project will be very beneficial to the armed forces of our country, especially the Navy. Lastly, 6 mega ports have been envisaged under the Sagarmala project. These are, firstly, Vizhinjam in the state of Kerala, Kolachil in the state of Tamil Nadu, Vadhavan in the state of Maharashtra, Tadadi in the state of Karnataka, Machilipatnam in the state of Andhra Pradesh, and lastly Sagar Island in the state of West Bengal. Based on our discussion, here is a prelims practice question. Please pause the video and solve it. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. The question is asking us to choose the pairs which have been correctly matched. First is the Visakhapatnam port and the deepest port of India. This is correct. Second, Kandla and tidal port. This is also right. Third, Chennai, largest artificial port, is incorrect. Chennai, though is an artificial port, is not the largest artificial port. The Nhava Sheva is the largest artificial port in India. Fourth, Marmagaon corporate port. This is incorrect. It is not Marmagaon but Annur, which is the first corporate port in India. Hence the right answer is A, 1 and 2 only. With this, let's move on to our next news. This news article has been taken from page number 14 from section 1 of the Hindu newspaper, and it is talking about a study which has used observations from Chandrayaan-1 mission and has found out that plasma particles from these solar winds also fill the night side of the moon. From the perspective of your syllabus, in the prelims it will form a part of your science, and from your mains it will come under paper 3 in the category of achievements of India in science and technology as well as awareness in the field of space. So as part of a discussion, we'll first look at what are solar winds. Secondly, we'll see what the research has found out. And then briefly, we'll talk about Chandrayaan-1 and some other moon missions. Now the solar winds are basically a stream of energetic particles which emanate or release from the sun's outermost layer called the corona. What happens is that corona, which is sun's outermost layer, reaches temperatures of up to 1 million degrees Celsius. And at this level, the sun's gravity cannot hold on to the rapidly moving particles, and thus these particles stream away from the star and form what is known as the solar wind. This solar wind, as discussed, is a stream which consists of certain particles. The composition of the solar wind is that it has a mixture of ionized particle, alpha particles, as well as traces of heavy ions. Ionized particles are basically the charged particles, and therefore they consist of the protons and the electrons. The alpha particles are basically from the helium, and the heavy ions are usually of nitrogen, oxygen, magnesium, silicon, iron, neon, sulfur, etc. Now coming to what is plasma, the very general definition of plasma is that any charged particles which are capable of conducting electricity are called as plasma. Now from the composition of our solar winds, we know that it's the protons and the electrons which are the charged particle. Hence the plasma contained in the solar winds is nothing but these electrically conducting particles known as the protons and the electrons. In our discussion, we would be using plasma and solar winds interchangeably, so do not get confused. And even technically, the solar winds majorly consist of this plasma only, and only 8 to 10% of the composition of the solar wind is the alpha particles or the heavy ions. Therefore, solar winds are nothing but the plasma. So basically what you need to remember is that plasma contained in the solar winds is the protons and electrons which are emanated from the sun's outer layer called the corona. And this plasma is a very good conductor of electricity. Now up till now what it used to be thought is that the solar winds which emanate from the sun get absorbed only by that side of the moon which is facing the sun. That is, all these solar winds, especially the plasma, will get absorbed by this side of the moon only. And this back side of this moon, that is this side here, also known as the night side of the moon, up till now the scientists used to assume that these plasma winds, they just circumvent this dark side of the moon, and therefore they used to feel that these plasma particles would not be found in the dark side of the moon. So the scientists thought that this dark side of the moon basically has a void where the solar plasma wind cannot reach. But recently, moon missions such as Chandrayaan-1, Kaguya, Chang'e-1 and Artemis have found evidence of these solar plasma winds on the dark side of the moon also. This study and discovery by the scientists becomes important as it will now help us understand why some cosmic bodies like the moon have no global magnetic fields. Therefore, this discovery will help us to better understand various cosmic bodies, which will improve our greater understanding of the space and the galaxies, including the various cosmic bodies it contains. Let us now know a few details about the various moon missions whose data has helped the scientists to carry out the discussed research. The first is the Chandrayaan-1, which was launched in 2008. Chandrayaan-1 is India's first mission to the moon and was launched successfully in October 2008 from Sriharikota. The main aim of the Chandrayaan-1 mission was to prepare a three-dimensional atlas of both the near side as well as the far side of the moon. The far side of the moon is also known as the dark side of the moon. Therefore, Chandrayaan-1 wanted to conduct a mineralogical mapping of the entire lunar surface so as to find about the mineral distribution as well as the distribution of various chemical elements like manganese, aluminium, calcium, etc. on the surface of the moon. The Chandrayaan-1 carried out high-resolution remote sensing of the lunar surface in visible light, near-infrared, low-energy X-rays as well as in high-energy X-rays. Hence, Chandrayaan-1 was very successful in finding out information and data critical to the lunar surface, which has since then helped scientists all across the world to have better clarity about the lunar surface. Some of the other moon missions were the Kaguya, which was launched by Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency or the JAXA, and it wanted to study the origin and the evolution of the moon. The second was China's Chang'e-1, which is part of the ambitious China Lunar Exploration Program, and the objective of the Chang'e-1 was to obtain a three-dimensional image of the lunar surface, to analyze the distribution of mineral across the moon, to probe the features of lunar soil, etc. The third was the Artemis mission or the Advanced Relay and Technology mission sent in space by the European Space Agency. Based on discussion, here is a prelims practice question. Please try and solve this by pausing the video. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. The question is asking which of the following pairs are correctly matched. First, European Space Agency and the Artemis mission. This is correct. Second, China Lunar Exploration Program and Kaguya. This is incorrect. Kaguya belongs to the JAXA or the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Third, JAXA and Chang'e-1. This is again incorrect. Chang'e-1 belongs to China. Therefore, the right answer is A, 1 only. With this, let's move on to our next article. The next article has been taken from page number 15 from the first section of the Hindu newspaper and is talking about the national policy for the treatment of rare diseases. The context of the article is the recent decision of the Union Health Ministry to suspend this national policy for treatment of rare diseases in December 2018. Before we discuss the reason why this policy was suspended, let us first talk about what a rare disease is and about the various measures and the features of this policy initiative. Let us first know what exactly is a rare disease. A rare disease is a health condition which affects smaller number of population as compared to the other prevalent diseases. Hence, a rare disease would form 6 to 8% of the prevalent diseases. Although there is no universal definition of a rare disease, WHO defines a rare disease to be the one which affects less than 1 in 1,000 people. That is, if out of 1,000 people only one person has such disease, then that disease would be categorized as a rare disease. However, the problem is that 80% of these rare diseases are genetic in nature and therefore they impact children because the children inherit such diseases from their parents in the womb itself. As far as the history of this policy is concerned, this policy came up as a directive of the Delhi High Court, after which the government set up 3 committees known as the Professor V.K. Paul Committee, the I.C. Verma Committee as well as the Deepak Tempe Committee. You do not need to mug up these names, it's just for your general information. From a UPSC perspective, it is basically a topic of social issues and will come under GS Paper 2 in the category of governance, in the subtopics of issue relating to the development and management of health, as well as government policies and interventions and issues arising out of their design and implementation. Let us now look at some short-term as well as long-term measures which were envisaged under this policy. When this policy came out, the first thing which was intended was to create an interministerial committee which can help to better coordinate between different ministries involved in this policy. There were even plans to launch a web-based application under which people could find online applications. Another short-term but major aim of this policy was to define the rare diseases which were especially prevalent in India. The policy also envisaged to set up a rare disease cell under the Health Ministry. As far as the funding of this policy was concerned, the central government was required to set up a fund of 100 crores for the treatment of rare genetic diseases in our country. Similarly, even the state governments had to establish a state corpus fund in which the central government would constitute 60% of the fund, whereas the state governments had to contribute 40% to that fund. Apart from all these measures, the policy required the government to create general awareness about these rare diseases in the public as well as patients and the relatives of patients as well. In order to strengthen the healthcare system for these rare patients, the government also had to conduct training programs for the healthcare professionals involved in the treatment of rare diseases. In addition to these short-term measures, in the longer run, the government wanted to create such a system which would help in reporting and collection of rare diseases. Thus, they wanted to compile a proper data of all those rare diseases which are prevalent in our country. Secondly, they even wanted to bring in certain kind of insurance mechanism under which health insurance would be available to people who suffer from these rare genetic disorders which are up till now not covered under health insurances. Thirdly, they wanted to strengthen the general lab network for better diagnosis of rare genetic disorders, and eventually the government wanted to develop a standardized protocol for the diagnosis and rolling out the testing in newborn babies. That is, the government wanted to bring out such a protocol in the current healthcare system of India where the newborns or the infants, while they are in the womb of the mother, they can be tested for such rare genetic diseases. Now, as far as the reason of withdrawal of this national policy was concerned, the reason cited was that this policy needs to be reformed as it has a lot of cost and implementation issues. To plug in the gaps which are coming in the implementation and the funding of this policy, the government felt that this policy needs to be reformed. In the meantime, this policy has now been moved under the National Health Mission. But the problem with this move is that National Health Mission covers primary and secondary diseases, whereas your rare genetic diseases come under the category of tertiary diseases. Lastly, in the meantime, the government has announced one-time financial assistance to all the patients who come from below poverty line. That is, all those patients who would have these rare diseases will get one-time financial assistance from the state if they belong to the below poverty line category. Lastly, in this article, the author has provided certain way forward with regards to this national policy. The first thing is that instead of completely abandoning this policy, the government should try and amend and reform this policy. And one of the measures which the author has suggested is to create a special fund outside the ambit of National Health Mission which will specifically cater for these rare diseases, because these rare diseases come under the tertiary care and National Health Mission specifically focuses on primary and secondary health care. Further, the author also gives his opinion that on the lines of a central rare disease cell, the states too should set up a state rare diseases cell under the Health Ministry for better understanding the conditions of the rare diseases which might be typical or endemic to a state. With this, we come to an end of this article's discussion. Let's move on to our next news. The next news article appears on page number 2 in the second section of the Hindu newspaper, and particularly the fact that ITC will launch eChoupal 4, that is the fourth generation of eChoupal model. From a UPSC syllabus, it will form a part of a GS paper 3 under the topic of economy, especially agriculture. So let us now understand what exactly this eChoupal is. The FMCG and hospitality conglomerate ITC has basically launched this eChoupal program or initiative. The eChoupal basically wants to link the rural farmers with the help of internet connection so that they can have better procurement of agricultural and aquaculture items like soya bean, wheat, prawns, coffee, etc. So what happens under the eChoupal is that ITC basically builds internet kiosks in various rural areas, and through these internet kiosks, the farmers can access information on various matters in their regional language itself. Therefore, the farmers can know about the weather conditions, the prevailing market prices, and can get basic knowledge on various scientific farm practices as well as risk management. The advantage of this eChoupal has been that with the help of information which is accessed through the internet in the regional language, the farmers have been able to enhance their productivity as well as the quality of their produce. And due to these two factors, they can now avail better prices at the market. Further, with the real-time information which the farmers get, the farmers are also able to align their farm output with the market demand. That is, they are producing only that much what is demanded in the market, thereby reducing waste. One of the major benefits of this eChoupal initiative has been that it has helped to reduce the transaction cost, especially by eliminating the middlemen. Earlier, the agriculture system was riddled with problems of middlemen, farm fragmentation, as well as poor and weak infrastructure. But now, with the coming of the eChoupal, the middlemen have almost been eliminated from the process of agricultural procurement, because now the farmers are virtually, that is through the internet, they are linked to the agricultural mandis, and thus they do not need to rely on the middlemen on any of their services. Under this eChoupal 4 version, which will be rolled out by ITC in the coming few months, ITC is now providing a mobile version of this program. So earlier, as we have discussed, ITC used to set up internet cafes or internet kiosks where the people had to access this information over a laptop or over a computer. But now ITC is coming out with a mobile version where it will be much easier for people to access information from the comfort of their homes. In addition to making the accessibility of internet much easier, under the eChoupal 4, more farm-focused services will be given to the farmers, which will include crop management, farm mechanization, healthcare services, as well as services of banking and insurance. Therefore, eChoupal 4 would offer a bouquet of farm-focused services to the rural farmers. Next, as a part of the eChoupal initiative, the ITC has also launched a program known as 12 Mahine Haryali. The main focus of 12 Mahine Haryali is to help farmers multiply their income by maximizing farm utilization throughout the year, that is all through 12 months. To simply say, under this initiative, ITC teaches such kind of practices and ways to the farmers in which they can use their farm throughout the year so that their farm does not lie idle in between the sowing season. Under this initiative, the company has helped farmers to adopt the high-yielding varieties of wheat. Secondly, it has introduced the short-duration paddy variety so as to enable timely sowing of wheat in the Rabi season. And lastly, it has also introduced practices such as zero-till sowing, which has led to help reduce the cost as well as help in timely sowing, and has also minimized the environmental pollution. With this, we come to an end of this discussion. Let's move on to our next news. The next news appears on page number 7 of part 2 of today's Hindu newspaper and is talking about the clearance which the ONGC has got from the National Wildlife Board in order to start extracting natural gas from the Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary. As far as the UPSC syllabus is concerned, it will form a part of environment under the prelims section. So in this article, we'll be talking about the Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary as well as we'll discuss a few details about the National Board of Wildlife. Now the Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary is located in the state of Tripura, very near to the Bangladesh border. The vegetation in the sanctuary comprises of tropical semi-evergreen as well as moist mixed deciduous forests. As far as fauna is concerned, Indian gaur, hullock gibbon, golden langur, as well as various kind of aquatic reptiles are what are found in this Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary. And the reason the sanctuary has been in news is because ONGC had found various gas reserves in the territory of this sanctuary and had applied for the approval from the National Board of Wildlife, which it has now got recently. Now the National Board of Wildlife is a statutory body which was established under the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act of 2002. This National Board of Wildlife is the apex body in our country that handles all wildlife related matters as well as approval of projects which need to be constructed in these protected areas. The protected areas basically include the wildlife sanctuaries, national parks and biosphere reserves. So if any kind of project needs to be constructed in the protected areas, a prior approval from the National Board of Wildlife is required. Additionally, even if the boundaries of these protected areas have to be altered, then also an approval of National Board of Wildlife is needed. The Prime Minister of India is the chairman of this National Board of Wildlife, whereas the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is the Vice Chairman. Based on our discussion, here is a prelims practice question regarding Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary. Please pause the video and we'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. First statement, it is known for critically endangered species of red panda. This is incorrect. Red panda is not found in Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary because the habitation conditions there for the red panda is not favorable. Second, it adjoins the Kebu Lamjau National Park in Manipur. Now this again is incorrect. We had discussed that Trishna Wildlife Sanctuary is located in Tripura. Therefore, there is no point that it can adjoin a national park which lies in Manipur. Third, moist, deciduous and semi-evergreen forests are prevalent vegetation of this region. This statement is correct. Hence, the right answer becomes A, only 3. With this, we come to an end for today's discussion. Let's move on to the question for the day.